Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling something absolutely critical, a real strategic choke point in the global economy for the 21st century. We're talking about rare earth elements, REs, and frankly, the immense geopolitical power China has built around controlling them.
That's right. And if you're not familiar with REs, you really should be. They get called industrial vitamins, which is a pretty good way to put it.
Industrial vitamins, I like that.
Yeah.
Because they're essential in small doses, right? For advanced defense, green energy, all the high-tech digital stuff we rely on.
Exactly. They're foundational. Think specialized magnets, efficient motors, guidance systems, the vibrant colors on your screens. It all comes back to these elements.
So the core issue we need to unpack today, based on our sources, is that China's dominance here isn't some geological fluke.
No, not at all. The research is clear. It's the result, the calculated outcome of a state-backed industrial strategy playing out over decades. And that gives Beijing just massive leverage.
Okay, so our mission today is to really understand that power, how it was built, how it's being used, and crucially, this global race that's now underway to build some resilience against it.
A very expensive race, we should add.
Right. Let's start at the beginning then, the unseen foundation. What exactly are rare earth elements?
Okay, so technically it's a group of 17 metallic elements. You've got the 15 lanthanides from the periodic table, plus scandium and yttrium. They all share pretty similar chemical properties.
And the name itself, rare earths, is a bit misleading, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah,
That's the first big misconception. Geologically, they're not actually rare. Cerium, for example, is more abundant in the Earth's crust than copper.
More than copper, okay.
Yeah, the rare part historically came from the difficulty in separating them. Because they're so chemically similar, isolating one from another out of the ore concentrate is incredibly complex.
Yeah.
And very, very costly.
So it's the processing, the refinement, it's the bottleneck.
Yeah.
Not finding them in the ground.
Precisely. That separation step is the industrial heart of the matter.
So why are they so indispensable? What makes them worth all that trouble?
It really comes down to their unique atomic structure, specifically the electrons in the Fes shell for the chemists out there. This structure gives them some amazing properties. Let's focus on two big ones.
Okay.
First, magnetism. Certain REEs, like neodymium, praseodymium, dysprosium, samarium, they allow us to create the world's strongest permanent magnets. You've probably heard of NdFeB magnets, neodymium iron boron.
Right, and the power-to-weight ratio is just incredible. I saw a figure like a 3-kilo magnet made with neodymium alloy can lift over 300 kilograms.
That's the kind of scale we're talking about. It enables incredible miniaturization and efficiency. Think about tiny motors and hard drives, speakles in your phone, but also massive generators in wind turbines.
Okay, magnetism's one. What's the second key property?
Luminescence. When you excite these elements, they emit very specific, very pure wavelengths of light. This allows for incredibly precise color tuning.
So the bright colors on our screens?
Exactly. Europium gives you reds and blues. Terbium gives you greens. That's what makes modern LCD and LED displays so vibrant and sharp. Without REEs, you just wouldn't get that quality.
It's amazing how these, obscure elements underpin so much. Let's talk scale. What does the dependency look like in strategic sectors? Defense, for instance.
Oh, in defense, they are absolutely critical. The U.S. Department of Defense lists them as vital. The numbers are pretty staggering. A single F-35 fighter jet that needs about 418 kilograms. That's 920 pounds of REEs.
920 pounds in one jet.
Yep. And it gets bigger. A Virginia-class nuclear submarine needs something like 4,600 kilograms. That's over 5 U.S. tons.
Wow.
They're baked into advanced radar, sonar, electronic warfare systems, the guidance packages for missiles like the Tomahawk. Precision and miniaturization in modern warfare relies heavily on them.
And then there's the whole green transition, which everyone's focused on now. That must be driving demand through the roof, too.
Fundamentally, take electric vehicles. Your typical EV motor uses about 1 to 2 kilograms of those high-strength NdFeB magnets, often with dysprosium added to help them withstand high temperatures.
Okay, 1 to 2 kilos per car times millions of EVs.
Exactly. And then utility-scale renewables. A big direct-drive wind turbine, say 3 megawatts, which is a common design, can require around 600 kilograms of rare earth materials, mainly for the generator magnets.
600 kilos per turbine.
Yeah. The International Energy Agency, the IEA, they project that just the demand for REEs from the clean energy sector alone is set to quadruple between 2021 and 2040.
Quadruple. Okay, so the need is massive. It's growing fast across all these critical areas.
Yeah.
Defense, green tech, digital economy. You're saying the elements themselves aren't geologically rare. So where does China's chokehold actually come from?
It comes from mastering the middle. Think of the supply chain in 3 stages. Upstream is mining the ore. Midstream is the complex separation and refining. Downstream is manufacturing components like magnets or phosphors. China mines a lot. Yeah, maybe around 69% of the global total upstream, but the real stranglehold, the absolute dominance, is in that midstream processing. They control an estimated 90% of the world's capacity for separating and refining rare earths.
90%.
90%. And then downstream, they also dominate the manufacturing of high-performance magnets, probably over 90% as well. So they control the crucial value-adding steps.
How did they engineer that? Was it just the Bayan Obo mine being so huge?
Bayan Obo in Inner Mongolia is definitely part of the story. It's the world's largest known REE deposit, about 40 million tons of reserves. That gave them a huge geological advantage to start with.
But geology alone doesn't explain 90% controlled processing.
No way. They leveraged that scale, but critically, they coupled it with, let's say, a historical willingness to accept enormous environmental costs. The toxic tailings lake near Botu, full of radioactive waste from the processing.
Yeah.
It's infamous.
Right, allowing them to keep costs artificially low.
Exactly. This combination scale plus subsidized, environmentally damaging production allowed Chinese producers to flood the market with REEs at prices so low, they systematically drove Western competitors out of business in the 80s and 90s.
Like the Mountain Pass mine in the U.S., right?
Rare.
Which actually shut down for a while.
Precisely. Mountain Pass is the classic example. It couldn't compete on price. And even when it restarted later, for years it had to ship its raw or concentrate to China for processing.
That's the irony, isn't it? Mining it in the U.S., shipping it to China to get refined, then buying back the finished product. It perfectly illustrates how losing the midstream loses control of the whole chain.
It absolutely does. Control the processing, you control everything. And China cemented that control. In 2021, they orchestrated this massive merger, creating the state-owned behemoth, the China Rare Earth Group.
Consolidation.
Massive consolidation. It brought about 70% of China's total production quota, especially for the really valuable heavy rare earths, under direct state command. This was a strategic move shifting power away from export quotas, which were vulnerable to WTO challenges, towards direct industrial control by the state. Much harder for outsiders to influence.
Okay, so that history brings us right up to the present. China has this engineered dominance, particularly in that vital midstream. Now, how are they actually using that leverage? We saw a preview back in 2010, right?
We did. The 2010 incident with Japan was really the world's wake-up call. China unofficially halted REE exports to Japan during a diplomatic spat over islands.
Yeah.
It wasn't an official embargo, but shipments just stopped.
And the market reaction.
Panic. Prices went absolutely crazy. Neodymium oxide, for example, surged tenfold. It showed the world just how vulnerable it was. Japan, to their credit, learned the lesson fast and invested heavily in diversification and stockpiling afterwards.
But the recent moves, especially the October 2025 export control regime you mentioned, sound different, more sophisticated than just turning off the tap.
Oh, much more sophisticated. The 2010 move was a blunt instrument. The 2025 rules are surgical. They represent a major pivot in how China exerts control. There are sort of 3 key elements to understand here.
Okay, break it down for us.
First, there's this thing called the 0.1% rule. It basically says that any company anywhere in the world needs an export license from Beijing if they want to sell a product that contains 0.1% or more by value of Chinese origin rare earths.
Wait, 0.1% by value? That seems tiny. But it applies globally.
Globally, it's an assertion of extraterritorial control. It means Beijing gets visibility and potentially veto power over huge swaths of the global high-tech trade, far beyond just raw materials. Think components, subassemblies.
That's a huge reach. What's the second element?
Second, the rules explicitly restrict the export of technology and expertise. We're talking the know-how, the specialized equipment, the technical skills related to RE separation and magnet manufacturing.
So actively preventing others from catching up on the processing front, locking in the technology gap.
Precisely. It's reinforcing the midstream chokehold by controlling the knowledge itself. And third, the targeting is now explicit. The rules state that export applications for foreign military users or defense contractors will, in principle, just be denied.
Okay, so direct denial for defense applications. That's a clear strategic lever against geopolitical rivals.
No question. It moves from market disruption to direct strategic denial.
So what does this all mean for the global economy? When you have this kind of sophisticated, policy-driven control, leading to, well, volatility.
The volatility itself is a weapon. It's incredibly damaging. We saw it after China imposed curbs on 7 heavy rare earths back in April 2025. The European price for dysprosium, which is crucial for high-temp magnets, nearly tripled in just weeks.
Tripled.
Yeah. Economic modeling suggests that if there were a severe sustained disruption, like a prolonged export halt of key elements, the shock could be similar to the supply chain chaos we saw in the early 2020s. It could easily shave a full percentage point off U.S. GDP growth and trigger double-digit wholesale inflation.
That's a major economic hit.
It is. And crucially, this volatility, or even just the threat of volatility, acts as a massive strategic barrier to entry for Western competitors.
How so?
Think about it. Building a state-of-the-art REE separation plant or magnet factory costs billions and takes years. Private investors need stable, predictable prices to justify that kind of long-term investment.
Right.
But if everyone knows China has the power and potentially the willingness to flood the market and crash prices by 50 or 70% overnight, well, what private company is going to risk billions on that?
Yeah, the risk is enormous. You could be bankrupted before you even start production.
Exactly. Private capital simply cannot compete against a state actor willing to use the market itself as a form of financial warfare. The risk is unmanageable.
So if the free market fundamentally can't solve this problem because of that state-driven risk,
Yeah.
what's the alternative? What are countries actually doing?
Well, the world is slowly and expensively adjusting to this reality. What we're seeing emerge is essentially a move towards a bifurcated system.
Bifurcated, meaning two separate systems.
Yeah. One supply chain still centered on China, likely remaining the most cost-efficient. And a second, parallel, non-Chinese supply chain built by the U.S., allies in Europe, Australia, Japan, etc., that aims for security and reliability.
But that second system,
Yeah.
it's going to be more expensive, right?
Oh, inevitably. As one source put it, it will be less efficient and significantly more expensive. That higher cost is basically the price of de-risking. It's the cost of security.
So what are the key efforts underway to build this parallel non-Chinese chain?
We're seeing several major plays, often heavily backed by governments. In the U.S., the big one is MP Materials, which operates the Mountain Pass mine in California. They're now building out their own midstream processing facility and even moving into magnet manufacturing in Texas.
And that's getting government support.
Significant support, yes, including things like price floor guarantees from the Department of Defense to help mitigate that investment risk we talked about.
Okay, what about outside the U.S.?
Australia is crucial. They have Lynas Rare Earths operating the Mount Weld mine, which is one of the richest deposits outside China. Lynas is a major non-Chinese producer, and they're building new processing capacity in Kalgoorlie, Western Australia, to handle their own concentrate.
So keeping the processing local, or at least allied.
Exactly. And then you have potential future sources. Vietnam, for instance, has the world's second largest estimated RE reserves, primarily at the Dong Pao mine. But developing those resources needs huge amounts of foreign capital and, critically, the processing technology that China is trying to hoard.
Right. So building these alternatives isn't just about mines. It requires serious policy action.
Absolutely. For these efforts to actually work and provide genuine resilience against a state-backed monopoly, governments have to step up in a big way.
What kinds of actions are needed?
Well, first, you need things like public-private partnerships. Governments need to offer long-term purchase agreements or offtake agreements and those price guarantees we mentioned. This provides the stability that private investors need to counter China's potential for predatory pricing.
Okay, de-risking the investment. What else?
Second, building strategic stockpiles. Holding anywhere from 6 to 24 months' worth of critical rare earths for defense and key industries. This acts as a buffer against short-term supply shocks and prevents panic buying if China does restrict exports.
A safety cushion.
Right. And third, international cooperation is key. Forging something like a critical minerals alliance, bringing together the U.S., Australia, Canada, the EU, Japan, South Korea to coordinate financing, share research and development, and present a united front. You can't challenge a giant alone.
Makes sense. What about the longer term? Things like recycling or finding substitutes.
Those are definitely part of the long-term picture, but they aren't near-term fixes, especially for the most critical applications. Recycling rates for REEs are currently tiny below 2%. It's technically very difficult.
Below 2%. Okay, not much help right now.
No. And substitution research is ongoing, finding alternative materials for magnets, maybe different motor designs for EVs. There's progress, but for really demanding applications like advanced defense systems where performance is paramount, substituting these unique elements is extremely hard, maybe even impossible in some cases without performance loss.
So recycling and substitution are future hopes, not current solutions for the strategic problem.
Pretty much. For the next decade at least, building that secure primary supply chain is the main game.
Okay, so if we try to connect all these threads, this isn't just about digging stuff out of the ground or building factories.
Not at all. When you step back, the bigger picture is really about technological sovereignty. It's about industrial independence in the foundational technologies of the 21st century. The choices that nations are making right now, grappling with this RE challenge, will fundamentally shape their economic security and geopolitical standing for decades.
And it seems like there are two massive connected hurdles to overcome.
That's right. First, there's the sheer capital needed. Billions upon billions of dollars to build the mines, the complex refineries, the magnet plants, all outside of China's established infrastructure. It's a huge financial mountain to climb.
And the second hurdle.
The second is closing the technical expertise gap. China spent decades building its lead in separation chemistry and magnet technology. They deliberately created this gap, and now, as we saw with the 2025 rules, they're actively trying to reinforce it by controlling the export of know-how. Overcoming that is arguably even harder than finding the money.
So, massive investment needed and a steep learning curve on the technology, all while the dominant player is actively trying to keep you behind.
That sums it up pretty well.
Which brings us to our final thought for you, the listener. We've talked about the volatility, the potential economic shocks, the huge public and private investment needed to build this secure, parallel supply chain for rare earths. This is all part of what you might call the unavoidable resilience tax. So the really provocative question for you is this. Everyone agrees this parallel system, this non-Chinese supply chain, is guaranteed to be significantly more expensive than relying on the established Chinese monopoly. Will Western consumers, industries, and governments actually be willing to consistently pay that higher price year after year to achieve genuine geopolitical independence and technological security? Or will the lure of cheaper components ultimately undermine the costly push for resilience? That's something to think about.